Okay, brethren, for the last couple of weeks or so, we've been looking at Revelation 17 and 18, which talks about Mystery Babylon the Great. Interesting character. And we're trying to identify exactly who Mystery Babylon the Great is. It's not that easy, right, as we've found out so far. But Revelation 17 does identify Mystery Babylon the Great as that great city that sits on many waters, meaning multitudes, languages, tongues, nations. So a great city. So the Mystery Babylon is a harlot, but the harlot represents a city. That's what it represents. But the question, of course, then would be, well, what city? Quite a few cities on the earth. Which one is it? And there are at least 5, popular options. There's probably some others, but the 5 I've mentioned so far are ones I've come across, and seem to be quite a lot of people out there pointing to this city or that one or this one. So there's 5 in total. You've got New York City, or sometimes it's America as a whole, because sometimes the city is taken to be figurative of the nation to which it belongs. So New York City, or perhaps America. You've got Rome, the city, or perhaps the extended Roman Empire. You've got old Babylon from ancient times. You've got Jerusalem, city of Jerusalem, and you've got the city of Mecca, which I think we got to last week. So those are the 5 cities which I've come across. Lots of articles and videos on those 5 cities. Now, New York City ticks quite a few boxes in my mind. It is a powerful city, obviously, biggest city in the US. It's a major international city. It is a global superpower type of city. Financial, it's got United Nations there. It's got Wall Street there. It's a super powerful city. But in terms of Mystery Babylon the Great, I don't see how you can identify New York City as being filled and drunk with the blood of the saints of God. At least not up till now. And I don't really see that happening. So I think, to me at least, obviously other people disagree with me. Other people out there say it is New York City and it is America, and they've got reasons for saying that. But to me, not being responsible for the blood of hundreds of thousands or millions of saints of God, I think that lets New York City out. Then you've got Rome today. Rome today, however, is not a powerful international city, right? In ancient times it was 100, 200, 300 AD, but not any longer. So I don't see Rome as fulfilling the description in Revelation 17 and 18. And also neither New York City nor Rome can be found in the desert, which is one of the places Revelation 17 tells us to look for the city. She's in the wilderness, or the Greek means desert. New York City? Nope. Rome? Nope. Ancient Babylon is in Iraq. That's in the desert. But that's all. Ancient Babylon is just ruins today. Now, okay, fair enough. If Christ is not returning for another century, perhaps in 100 years' time, Babylon would have been rebuilt, extended, and entered into all sorts of agreements and contracts and treaties around the world. But if it's any time in the next 10 to 20 years that Christ returns and the end time is with us, I don't see ancient Babylon working. Then you've got Jerusalem. Jerusalem ticks quite a few boxes. First of all, Jerusalem is in the desert, strangely enough. It's called a great city. In Revelation 11, it says the 2 witnesses' bodies lie there in that great city where our Lord was crucified. That's Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is called a great city, which is the language of Revelation 17. And of course, Jesus charged the Pharisees, the religious leaders, with being responsible for the blood of the prophets of old. So that sort of links in a little bit at least. And then, of course, God often calls Jerusalem a harlot, which is the language of Revelation 17, right? And Jerusalem is very wicked in the end times. Revelation 11 again calls her Sodom and Egypt. Pretty disgusting places spiritually. So it takes quite a few sort of boxes, but it's not entirely conclusive because other cities are called harlots by God. For example, Nineveh. We saw this last week. Nineveh is referred to as a harlot. Also in Jonah, Nineveh is referred to as that great city. So a great city, which is a harlot, well, that's Revelation 17 language. So Jerusalem might tick boxes, but it's not conclusive because Nineveh is a great city, which is a harlot. Also, the city of Tyre is a harlot. We saw that last week. And then again, following its chastisement, which it will get, and deservedly so, Jerusalem seems to return to God. Right? He calls her a delight and married rather than being a harlot. And I think that's one of the major distinctions between Mystery Babylon the Great of Revelation 17 and Jerusalem the city that we know today, because Mystery Babylon will be utterly destroyed, utterly burned with fire, never to be found again. It's blown away, it's finished, it's kaput, it's history, whereas Jerusalem, after its punishment and chastisement, returns to God. And through the millennium and out into eternity, it's a righteous city and God's headquarters. And then last week, finally, we got to the fifth of the five more popular cities, which is the city of Mecca, or Saudi Arabia, perhaps, Arabia, as being the representative city of Arabia. Now, Mecca has a few boxes ticked because it's the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad. It's the birthplace of the world's largest man-made religion, which is Islam, right? It's a worship center for 2 billion people on the earth. 1/4 of all the world's population kneel down daily, or should do at least, and pray towards the Kaaba in the city of Mecca in Arabia, right? And at least once in their lives, if they're healthy enough, they're supposed to make a pilgrimage to Mecca to go round and round and round the Kaaba, that big black block. And of course, historically, Islam has certainly got plenty of blood associated with her. Some people have figured out that Islam, in the 1400 years since it began, is responsible for the blood of 270 million people. Not all of them Christians, anybody's fair game to the Muslim world, Buddhists and Hindus and so on, atheists, whatever, but Christians. And even today, places like Nigeria, still many Christians being killed week by week by week by Muslims, right? So historically, they've got about 250 million people killed by Islam, the religion of peace, and in the end times, I imagine another bout of such savagery. And of course, Mecca and Arabia that's an uber wealthy state, right? It's the main funder of Islamic terrorism on the earth. It uses its wealth, its humongous wealth, to influence politics, geopolitics around the world, especially the USA, interestingly. I mean, Mohammed bin Salman was in the White House just this week, meeting President Trump, right? And according to some people, Mecca, Saudi Arabia, has donated about $2 billion to several recent American presidents. Why? Well, one assumes potentially illicit favors, fornication. And I think, personally, my opinion, certain important cover-ups of reality, hidden because it would embarrass Saudi Arabia, which is a source of great wealth to the US and certainly a number of its leading people. Plus, of course, Islam, based in Mecca, has a spirit of Antichrist. It rejects Jesus Christ. It has a Jesus Christ in its theology, but their Jesus Christ, whom they call Isa, didn't die, wasn't the Son of God, wasn't resurrected. So in other words, that's the spirit of Antichrist. You reject Christ, you reject the one who sent Christ. So Islam has the spirit of Antichrist, and it's the biggest man-made religion on the earth, right? And it's in the desert. Mecca is in the desert, right? So, and apart from that, Islam is the majority religion in over 50 countries on the earth. So many, many countries, not just the US and its illicit relationship with Saudi Arabia, but over 50 nations on the earth are Muslim majority nations where the people there are influenced by, affected by this strange religion. And even in other countries like here in Britain, the US, Canada and so on, there are a number of Muslims now in important positions in government, right, in Western society. For example, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is a Muslim. The Mayor-elect of New York City, curiously enough, is a Muslim, Mr. Mamdani, who was also in the White House meeting Mr. Trump this week. Oh, very strange stuff. And many positions in the media, newspapers, TV, in local government are now occupied by Muslims whose loyalty is not to Jesus Christ or derivative religions they're from, but to Islam, whose objective is to take over the world. That's admitted by them. So some of these, Muslims occupying high office in government and the media and so on, they have varying degrees of loyalty to the countries they live in, and a great deal of loyalty in the main to Mecca or Arabia, the birthplace of Islam. So Mecca ticks a lot of boxes. And if it is ultimately the city which is destroyed, an awful lot of people will miss the money. Miss the influence, miss the status, not just those in Mecca and Arabia, but around the world who have enjoyed a great deal of largesse from the money, the wealth of Mecca and Saudi Arabia. Plus, on top of that, there are some other scriptures which I want to look at, which point, not conclusively, nothing seems to be conclusive, unfortunately, but point, at least, in the direction of Mecca and Arabia. So let's start. I think I've got half a dozen scriptures. So we're going to start in Isaiah 47. Isaiah, because one eye was higher than the other. Isaiah 47:1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. So, we're talking of Mystery Babylon, which I think means not the original Babylon, but Mystery Babylon. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground without a throne, implying it had a throne. It had a royal position, but now it's going to sit we're going to say it's going to be humiliated. O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you shall no more be called tender and delicate. So the virgin daughter of Babylon was noble, looks like it had a throne, a position of royalty, but now, if this is end time prophecy, it's going to be humiliated. Sit on the ground. What? No throne? Sit on the ground, sit in the ashes. You'll no more be called tender and delicate or beautiful, because now you're disgraced. Let's read verses 5 to 11. Sit in silence and go into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, being Babylon, for you shall no longer be called the Lady of Kingdoms. Or some translations put the Queen of Kingdoms. The New American Standard Bible, you will no longer be called the Queen of Kingdoms, the Lady of Kingdoms, the Queen of Kingdoms. She was royalty. She was beautiful. She was adored and worshipped, right? For all the wrong reasons, of course. Verse 6, I was angry with my people, says God. I have profaned my inheritance, that's God's people, and given them into your hand. You showed them no mercy. On the elderly you laid your yoke very heavily. Well, to me it suggests that I think my people and my inheritance are the Jews, Judah, Jerusalem, and God seems to have given Jerusalem and Judah into the hand of Babylon. So I don't think Babylon can be Jerusalem, because it looks there like Jerusalem was handed over to Babylon to be punished heavily, it says there. You showed them no mercy. So in the end times, Mystery Babylon will show little mercy to the people of Israel, Jerusalem, whatever. And you said, because pride and so on, you said, I shall be a lady forever. The NIV, the nearly inspired version, quotes that as, you said, I am forever the eternal queen. Royal history, great history, but it's going to end. So that you did not take these things to heart, nor remember the latter end of them. Therefore hear this now, you, Babylon, who are given to pleasures, who dwell securely, who say in your heart, I am, and there's no one else besides me. I'm it. I'm the big IT. I shall not sit as a widow, nor shall I know the loss of children. But these two things shall indeed come to you in a moment, in one day. And that might remind us of Revelation 18:8, which says that that Mystery Babylon the Great is destroyed in one day. So that sounds like an end-time prophecy. Babylon in the end time will lose its position, its royal background in one day. The loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon you in their fullness, because of the multitude of your sorceries, for the great abundance of your enchantments. And I think sorceries and enchantments is talking about its influence on the world. How can a man-made religion by some weird camel herder possibly influence 2 billion people and 50 nations and end up governing London and New York City? How did that come about? Well, because it's got some mysterious power. It's sorceries, it's enchantments. For you have trusted in your wickedness, and it is a wicked religion. You have said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and your knowledge have warped you. You have said in your heart, I am, and there's no one else besides me. Therefore evil, or calamity, shall come upon you. You shall not know from where it arises. Trouble shall fall upon you. You will not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon you suddenly, which you shall not know. One day, suddenly, it will be destroyed. It's super uber wealthy and powerful. It reigns over the kings of the earth. There's all manner of contracts and agreements and alliances. 2 billion people heed its word and directives and so on. It'll be destroyed overnight. Now, of course, that doesn't exactly help identify, which city Babylon the Great will be, but it does perhaps remind us that much of the book of Revelation, such as chapter 17 and 18, does in fact point back to the Old Testament, because it talks there of Babylon, the queen, the lady of kingdoms, which will be destroyed in one day. And the thing about the book of Revelation, which we have covered in the past, is that the book of Revelation is not brand new revelation that first appears for the first time ever in the book of Revelation. Some people have worked out that the book of Revelation, about 70% of it, right, nearly 3/4 of the book of Revelation, is referring to and alluding to the Old Testament. There's over 1,000 allusions, not illusions, 1,000 allusions in the book of Revelation to the Old Testament. In the New Testament, in the book of Revelation, we've got Mystery Babylon the Great, destroyed in one day, which bedazzles the world. And in the Old Testament, we find Babylon the Great, destroyed in one day, and its sorceries and enchantments allow it to govern the world. So the book of Revelation is pointing us back to the Old Testament. In fact, really we should start with the Old Testament to help us to understand the new when we get there. Not start on the new and then try and sort of squeeze it in from the Old Testament. Have a look at Isaiah 13. So Isaiah and chapter 13. I'm going to read verses 1 and then I think 6 through 10. Isaiah 13 verse 1. The burden, or the heavy weight, heavy message against Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amos saw. So chapter 13 is about Babylon. Babylon of the day, but I guess in duality terms, picturing Babylon in the end time, as I think we'll see in the next few verses. So verses 6 through 10. Wail, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It will come as destruction from the Almighty. Well, the day of the Lord, I think we understand that to be the end time. After the seals are opened, seals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you come to seal 7, which is the day of the Lord. That's when the 7 trumpets are blown, after which the 7 woes are poured out. That's the day of the Lord, which I've said in the past, seems to extend for about 12 months, roughly, right? So that's the day of the Lord. It's end time language. It's presumably talking about Babylon in the end times, at the time coinciding at least very closely with the day of the Lord. It will come as destruction from the Almighty. Therefore all hands will be limp, every man's heart will melt. They will be afraid. Pangs and sorrows will take hold of them. They will be in pain as a woman in childbirth. They'll be amazed at one another. Their faces will be like flames. So terrible times. Times when people are bent over double, like women in labour and so on, right? Because it's just so frightening, so terrifying. Behold, verse 9, the day of the Lord comes cruel, with both wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he will destroy its sinners from it. For the stars of heaven and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be darkened in its going forth, and the moon will not cause its light to shine. Again, this appears to be, end times, end time prophecy. And it talks about, this land will be desolate, talking of Babylon, and destroy the sinners from it. Plenty of sinners in this place. Let's read verses 19 to 21. And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldeans' pride, will be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. That's his future. What happened to Sodom and Gomorrah? Fire and brimstone came out of heaven, destroyed it into ashes, and the smoke of its burning went up. That's the ultimate destiny of Mystery Babylon the Great, or Babylon as it says here, is going to be destroyed as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, which I guess, if I take it literally, means fire and brimstone and smoke and ashes and burning. Verse 20, it will never be inhabited, nor will it be settled from generation to generation, nor will the Arabian pitch tents there, nor will the shepherds make their sheepfolds there. But wild beasts of the desert will lie there, and their houses will be full of owls, ostriches will dwell there, and wild goats will caper there, and so on. Which might remind you of last week when we looked at Revelation 17 and 18 about the ultimate destiny of Mystery Babylon the Great. It's going to be destroyed, utterly burned with fire. It said nothing will be there. No light, no sound of the flutist or the guitarist or the bagpipe player. Nobody gets married there. It'll just be a home, a place where it says demons and unclean creatures will be. Well, that looks like the language of this. Verse 20, it will never be inhabited, nor settled from generation to generation. It's going to be destroyed. And then interesting, this little phrase here in verse 20, nor will the Arabian pitch tents there. That sounds like it's going to surprise us. Oh, well, that's odd. The Arabians won't pitch their tents there. Well, if Mystery Babylon is New York or Rome, that's hardly a point worth making, because why would any Arabians pitch their tents in New York or Rome or Jerusalem for that matter? But there's one place where the Arabians might be expected to pitch their tents. That, of course, is in Arabia, right? Because, after all, Arabians live in Arabia. If Arabians are going to pitch their tents, it's going to be in Arabia. But it says they won't do that. That's because one imagines the place will now be destroyed, like Sodom and Gomorrah. It'll be just ashes, fumes, smoke going up, and so on. So therefore, it's making an interesting point there that following the destruction, the desolation of Babylon, the Arabians will no longer pitch their tents there. As it so happens, Arabia currently has one of the biggest tent cities in the world. I think it is the biggest tent city in the world. We've got a slide to sort of show you of a place called Mina. There's you can see there, those are a whole bunch of tents which are put up. You can see little boxes in the sort of middle of the picture. Those are air conditioning units. Because if you're in the Meccan desert, the temperatures are probably well over 100 Fahrenheit. When you go there for the Hajj, the pilgrimage, which about 4.5 million people go to, I think that this city there, the city of Mina, accommodates 3 million people, Arabians in the main, dwelling in tents. I think another picture, have we? Yeah, that's a bit further away, I think. But you can see the extent of it. There's 3 million people, in addition to the normal people living in Mecca, who attend the Hajj, part of their duties of their lives to go there. And that's called Mina. So that's a tent city. And what this seems to be saying is that, verse 20, by surprise, the Arabians won't pitch their tents there. Well, but they can't. the land's been destroyed, which to me points towards Mecca, right? Then if we turn to Isaiah 21, so Isaiah 21. Now the heading in my New King James Version says the fall of Babylon proclaimed. So they know it's all about Babylon, which we'll see. Slightly mysterious first verse, Isaiah 21 and 1. The burden, or the heavy prophecy, against the wilderness of the sea. The wilderness, now the word wilderness can be translated desert, desert of the sea, desert by the sea. And other translations, the King James Version says the desert of the sea, rather than wilderness. New King James says wilderness, but I think desert is probably more appropriate. So the King James says the desert of the sea. The NIV, the nearly inspired version, says the desert by the sea. And the New Living Translation expands it a bit more and says, the message came to me concerning Babylon, the desert by the sea. So Isaiah 21 is about Babylon in prophecy, and it refers to Babylon as the desert of the sea or the desert by the sea. And that's because Arabia is surrounded by seas. It's surrounded by the Red Sea on one side, the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Sea, and in fact in Arabic, Saudi Arabia, Saudi is the name of the royal family. It's actually called Arabia geographically, but Arabia is called Jazirat al-Arab. Jazirat, Jazirat, Al, Arab, as in Arab. Jazirat al-Arab is the Arabian name for Arabia, which means the island of the Arabs. The island because it's surrounded by seas. I think we've got a couple of photographs to show you there. So there's one of them. That's obviously taken by a pigeon flying very high. Saudi Arabia and the Arabian Peninsula. Jaziratu, it says there, El Arab, the island of the Arabs. So you can see the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Sea, and so on all around it. And the one on the left you can certainly see is pretty much desert-like. I think we may have one more, have we? Yeah, that's looking towards Mecca from the distance, the top left. And the bottom left, again, it's desert. It's in the desert. Mecca is a city most surely in the desert. But we're in Isaiah 21. So the entire prophecy in Isaiah 21 is against the wilderness of the sea, the desert of the sea, which is Babylon. Or to quote again, the New Living Translation, the message came to me concerning Babylon, the desert by the sea. So we're going to read verses 6 to 9. For thus has the Lord said to me, go, set a watchman, let him declare what he sees. And a watchman, of course, gets his binoculars out, looks into distance and tries to give you forewarning what's coming. And he saw a chariot with a pair of horsemen, a chariot of donkeys and a chariot of camels, and he listened earnestly with great care. Then he cried, a lion, or cried as a lion, some translations say, my Lord, I stand continually on the watchtower in the daytime. I've sat at my post every night, and look, here comes a chariot of men with a pair of horsemen. Then he answered and said, Babylon is fallen, and all the carved images of her gods he has broken to the ground. Well, Babylon is fallen is a direct quote from Revelation 18, verses 1 and 2. So in other words, as we said 5 minutes ago, the book of Revelation is not new revelation, it's just been created. It's 1,000 allusions to the Old Testament. 70% of the book of Revelation is talking about stuff that's referred to, quoted from, etc. in the Old Testament. So here we've got Babylon is fallen. That's directly quoted in Revelation 18. So I think we're in the same territory, right? So it's talking of Babylon being destroyed, fallen, that means destroyed, right? Desolate. All her carved images of her gods she has broken to the ground, right? Let's drop down to verse 11. Continuing the prophecy, it moves to other geographical areas now. The burden against Duma. He calls to me out of Seir, watchman, what of the night? Watchman, what of the night? But this particular prophecy, I'm not going into the details of it, it's a burden or a prophecy against Duma. Well, who's Duma? Where's Duma? Well, Duma was one of the sons of Ishmael. I think his sixth son, Ishmael, Abraham's son. So Duma is a son of Ishmael. He founded a tribe in Arabia, and there's a city, or was a city at least, don't know if it's still around today, of Duma in Arabia. So in other words, the burden against Duma is a burden against a city and tribe in Arabia, the sixth son of Ishmael. Then verse 13, the burden against Arabia. It's explicit there. In the forest of Arabia you will lodge, O you travelling companies of Dedanites, against Arabia. And then drop down to verse 16. For thus the Lord has said to me, within a year, according to the year of a hired man, all the glory of Kedar will fail. Right? Well, who's Kedar? Where's Kedar? Oh, Kedar is the second son of Ishmael. I think he had about a dozen sons. Sixth one was Duma. Second son was Kedar. And Kedar moved to Arabia and had a tribe of Kedarites, or whatever they're called, in Arabia. Right? So Isaiah 21, which is about Babylon is fallen, all the geographical references in Isaiah 21 are in Arabia. Verse 11, Duma is in Arabia. 13, burden against Arabia. Verse 16, glory of Kedar will fail. That Kedar is in Arabia, tribe in Arabia. So all the geographical references are to Arabia and to its coming destruction, which sort of makes sense. And of course in Arabia we find Mecca, a great city, and the holiest city to a quarter of the world's population. So I think, Mecca and Saudi Arabia or Arabia are reasonably well supported scripturally. And as we saw last week, Arabia in particular has massive financial power worldwide. Plus their teaching, contrary to the God of heaven, right, and all manner of strange things that they teach and practice, they've got great influence in the world. Even Western, previously Christian countries like Britain, like the USA, I think Canada as well, same sort of issues there, are historically Christian countries are being, some would say, invaded, certainly infiltrated by many people from this man-made religion, which has a history of 270 million bloody deaths behind it. Right, not good, and I think Mecca is a centre of all of that. Let's turn to Revelation 18. Go back to the key passage. So this is the longest single prophecy in the New Testament, Revelation 17 and 18, I'm told. I tend to think of the book of Revelation as prophecy from start to finish, but other experts, apart from me, say Revelation 17:18 is the single longest prophetic passage in the New Testament. So Revelation 18, when I get there, we're going to read verses 9 to 13. Verse 9, the kings of the earth, they're not kings, it might be kings, but it could be CEOs, financial leaders, presidents, prime ministers, senior so-called elites. I don't like calling them elites because most of them are just parasites. But the kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her, with Mystery Babylon the Great, this great city, will weep and lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. And the merchants of the earth, not the kings of course lamenting because the source of money and influence, status is probably gone, but the merchants, they're the tradesmen. The merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no one buys their merchandise any more. Merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones and pearls, fine linen and purple, silk and scarlet, every kind of citron wood, every kind of object of ivory, every kind of object of most precious wood, bronze, iron, and marble, and cinnamon, and incense, fragrant oil and frankincense, wine and oil, fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and chariots, and bodies and souls of men. Quite a long list there of, I guess, largely commodities that this great city imports, right? There's three categories there, people point out. There's luxury goods, so you've got things like gold and silver and precious stones and pearls and fine linen and purple and so on, precious goods. Then you've got foods such as wine and oil, fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep and so on. And then you've got men, bodies and souls of men, which I think must imply slave labour, which, to be fair, many Muslim countries are notorious for having cheap labour that they keep almost like slaves, right? So there's this three types of commodity there, which suggests, if you want to work backwards, that probably this great city, wherever it is, doesn't have many resources of its own because it's importing almost everything, precious things, foods, human beings, importing them all, because I think you can probably conclude that means it doesn't have many natural resources of its own. New York, for example, doesn't got to go very far to get wheat and rye and grain and sheep and cattle and lamb and things of that nature because they're all around. All right? And wood, of course, forests and wood. So a place like New York has got easy access to oodles and oodles of commodities that you need to have a good life. But this city doesn't. It has to import them all. Again, that suggests, it's like it says, it's a city in the desert. And certainly Mecca doesn't have much going for it in the desert. So it does need pretty much everything. And of course, it's easy to get everything if you've got a lot of money, which of course Mecca has got a lot of money. It's mostly oil money, of course, right? So it uses that money to import everything, including this week, a big deal with President Trump to import F-35s, because that's one of the big deals between the US and Arabia is military weaponry. Not really good, I don't think, but there we go. That's where we are. So the description there of all those precious goods and foods and human beings is consistent, I believe, with a desert power with very limited resources of its own. But let's carry on and read verses 14 through 20. And obviously at the end of this, we should be pretty familiar with the narrative, which is one of the keys going forward. The fruit that your soul longed for has gone from you, and all the things which are rich and splendid have gone from you, and you shall find them no more at all. The merchants of these things who became rich by her, obviously if she's importing all this stuff, and you're supplying it as a merchant, you're going to get, quite a good cut, will stand at a distance for fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, for in 1 hour such great riches came to nothing. Every shipmaster, all who travel by ship, sailors, and as many as trade on the sea, stood at a distance and cried out when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What is like this great city? Which of course is now past tense. They threw dust on their heads, cried out, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city in which all her ships on the sea became rich by her wealth. For in 1 hour she is made desolate. So the merchants, the tradesmen, are bereft. Their world has ended. This city imported so much wealth, so much commodities, and they became super wealthy by that means, but now it's all over. They can see the smoke going up. It's finished. Their business model is over, kaput, finished, and they're lamenting and tears and weeping and wailing. But the saints aren't. Verse 20, Rejoice over her, O heaven, and you holy apostles and prophets, for God has avenged you on her. So at the destruction of Mystery Babylon the Great, this great city, heaven rejoices. It's hallelujah time, right? Because well, it's evil. Sorceries, enchantments, violence, the blood of the saints, drunk. It says Revelation 17, drunk with the blood of the saints and martyrs of Jesus, drunk with their blood, inebriated with their blood, an evil, wicked, end-time woman or city. So when it's destroyed, everybody in heaven at least rejoices, but the tradesmen don't, because it's the end of their world. Let's read verses 21 to 24, still in chapter 18. Then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence the great city Babylon shall be thrown down and shall not be found any more. So it's not a decline like, say, the Roman Empire declined over centuries. British Empire, there was one once upon a time, before my time. British Empire took a few decades, but it slowly declined, and now Britain's a fairly poor nation on the world scene. But this Babylon goes down abruptly, suddenly, violently. The sound of harpists, musicians, flutists, and trumpeters shall not be heard in you any more. No craftsman of any craft shall be found in you any more. The sound of a millstone shall not be heard in you any more. It's over. Mystery Babylon is finished. It's utterly burned up. There's nothing left. Nobody's going to be there. The light of a lamp shall not shine in you any more. The voice of a bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you any more. For your merchants were the great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived, and in her was found the blood of prophets and saints, and of all who were slain on the earth. This is a bloody woman, a bloody city, right, including the blood of the saints, right? You can see there. So that's the sort of state she's in. I think we can probably read chapter 18, verse 2, just to complete the description of her future. And he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, is fallen. Just read that in Isaiah. And has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, a cage for every unclean and hated bird, and so on. So yeah, empty, destroyed. Some strange, rather vile creatures might continue to inhabit Mystery Babylon the Great when she's destroyed by God, right? But that's, so we can see there that the merchants are distraught. You've just destroyed their world. They're lamenting and grieving, but heaven rejoices. And we can see that a bit more if we read chapter 19, verses 1 through 5, so there's no chapter break, I guess, in the original. We just read about the destruction of the great city of Babylon, thrown down, not found anymore, and it's empty of all types of decent life, just a home, a dwelling place for strange, vile creatures, and just carrying on to chapter 19 without any real break, verses 1 through 5. After these things I heard a loud voice of a great multitude in heaven. I think it says much people in the King James Version. The loud voice of much people in heaven, a great multitude in heaven, saying, Alleluia! Salvation and glory and honour and power belong to the Lord our God. For true and righteous are his judgments, because he has judged the great harlot who corrupted the earth with her fornication, spiritual fornication, and he has avenged on her the blood of his servants shed by her. So she gets her comeuppance. God destroys Mystery Babylon the Great and avenges the blood of his saints upon her. Right? And so the multitude in heaven shout and rejoice. Again they said, Alleluia! Her smoke rises up forever and ever. She's destroyed. The smoke goes up, never to come down again. And they shout, Hallelujah! And the 24 elders and the 4 living creatures fell down and worshipped God who sat on the throne, saying, Amen, Alleluia! Then a voice came from the throne, saying, Praise our God, all you his servants, and those who fear him, both small and great. So they're all joining together, I think, to sing hallelujah and songs of praise towards God for destroying Mystery Babylon, whose smoke ascends forever. Now, who are the great multitude? In verse 1, I'm not going to cover that now, but I have in the past. if you check out the Revelation series, which went on for about 100 years, I did go through this in some detail, pointing out that the great multitude appear to me to be the resurrected saints, the changed saints, who were caught away, or raptured if you prefer that language, about 1 year earlier. So they're now in heaven, and they can see what's taking place on the earth. And they're rejoicing for the destruction of Mystery Babylon the Great. Right? Which, like I said last week, I don't think there's much rejoicing when Jerusalem is destroyed, which she will be, and rightly so, because her terrible attitude towards Jesus and God the Father. Because when Jesus looked ahead and saw the destruction of Jerusalem, he wept. When Jeremiah witnessed the destruction of Jerusalem, he wrote the book of Lamentations. So Jerusalem being destroyed is a source of pain and anguish for God's people. Mystery Babylon, if it's Mecca, for example, which has got hundreds of millions of deaths attributed to it today, who knows what the next few years will bring, but that's, fantastic, destroyed. The biggest man-made religion on the earth is brought to an end, a crushing end, and destroyed, right? So I think that's probably as far as we can go looking at this topic without working it to death or working me to death. So I'm proposing to sort of leave it there, other than just a quick summary. Well, more or less quick summary. Got to finish 10 minutes early today, which is
until you summarise and get gas on. Yeah.
It's not too long a summary. So what we've done so far, we've reviewed the main narratives, Revelation 17 and 18, and that's important. We should remain familiar with the narratives, right? And like I've said, I think I've missed a million times, with prophecy, we always see through a glass darkly, right? Not everything is absolutely clear today. But I think when we get there, when we get to the times which prophecy is referring to, it'll be much more obvious who's what, what's what, right? And of course, we know the narrative, know what descriptions are. We'll say, oh, well, that's it. That's what Revelation 17 and 18 are about. Look, it's evident, it's clear. If you don't know the narratives, you won't recognize anything. So it's important that we know the narrative, the text, and be familiar with it. And then when we see the reality, it'll be much, much more clear than today. We've looked at 5, possible cities. Though some folk don't like any of those. There's some folk say that the Mystery Babylon is actually going to be the New World Order, NWO, the New World Order, which people are looking for to rise up. And others say it's the apostate church. That the church today, Christian church today, is rubbish, and people are not devout, and people are selfish, and a lot of churches are riddled with homosexuality and things of that nature. So some people say, no, the Mystery Babylon is actually the apostate church, which we must come out of and flee from her. Right? Okay. But it does say it's a great city, so I don't know how you can get around that. And then none of the 5 we've looked at, it seems to me to be a perfect fit for various reasons. But of course, I recognise that they may all look different in 5 or 10 years from now, right? For example, Jerusalem, the man of sin, will eventually take his place in the temple, showing himself that he is God and bringing great power to himself and ruling from Jerusalem. So that might change the character of Jerusalem quite a bit when he's there doing his stuff, aided by the false prophet and so on. So, maybe that's something to look out for. Well, I tend to think that's really the man of sin being the problem rather than the character of Jerusalem and its people. But who knows? And in Saudi Arabia, they're having embarked in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years on some major construction work, some major infrastructure. They're building a brand new city, the city of Neom, down by the Red Sea. They're building a 100-mile city called The Line, Line. I think they're struggling a bit. I think money is proving to be a problem. Even for Saudi Arabia, money is not endless, and there are some technical difficulties. But 10 years from now, if they succeed, the Line will have about 9 million people living in it. This 100-mile long city right by the Red Sea where the boats can come in and out. There's ports can be built there. There's airports being built there. And so Saudi Arabia will look potentially very different in 5 or 10 years' time, right? So, the whole world might look different in 5 or 10 years' time. So I think what we have to do, if I absolutely conclude now, is we need to remain very familiar with the narrative. Chapter 17, chapter 18, some of the Old Testament allusions we read in Isaiah. Know those narratives, right? And then we'll be better able, by watching vigilantly, to identify the city when it pops up before our amazed eyes. Okay, that'll do us for now, I think. So we'll conclude today's Bible study there.